Welcome to the Next Generation Rockstars podcast. If you are trying to figure out how do you recruit and retain this next generation of rockstar talent, well, you are in the right place. All right, so today's episode of the Next Generation Rockstars podcast has a very special interview. This is actually the leader of two of our guests from season one, two of our rock stars from season one. So today I interviewed Tonia Hau, who is an account director at Communique USA here in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And she talks about how wonderful it can be to be a leader of early in career talent. So everybody on her team has less than 5 years of business experience. Less than 5 years. And she really pours into them and really develops them and turns them into some amazing employees that will go on to have phenomenal careers. So I hope that you get out your pen, your paper, or you take lots of mental notes if you're listening to this while you drive into work, because Tonia Hau is going to break it down for you on how to be a phenomenal, authentic, and transparent leader for that early in career talent. Hey there, and welcome to this episode of the Next Generation Rockstars podcast. We have a really fantastic episode with you today. We have Tonia Hau, who is with Communique USA, where she is an account director. Welcome to the show, Tonia.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No worries. So I knew I had to talk to Tonia last season. So season one, I interviewed two of her direct reports in the later part of the season. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely go back, check out that episode. But they raved about their leader, their manager, who happens to be Tonia. So Tonia, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Hi. Well, yes, as you mentioned, I'm the account director at Communique. I report to the Vice President of Client Services, Stephanie Thompson, who is a fabulous leader and models leadership well for me. And she reports to Shawnee Godwin, our CEO and president. And it's just, I've worked there for 5 years. It's a wonderful organization to work for. They focus a lot on work-life balance, which makes my job a lot easier and more fulfilling. And I have two teenagers. I have one boy in college who's getting ready to start his sophomore year, and I have a daughter who is starting her senior year of high school.
Oh, very exciting.
I am recently engaged and going to be married this fall. So, yes.
Lots going on in your personal life there.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. That is fantastic. So I just have a lot of questions for you, honestly, because I think that when people get a leadership role for whether it's the first time or it's their first time really managing, early in career, those right out of college employees, they want to pull their hair out. They don't get it. And it really is a test of a lot of things, but empathy, listening, development, leadership in general. So really, can you tell the audience a little bit about what is your specific or general ideas around leadership, around developing talent? How do you see the world?
Okay. I mean, I was a little bit embarrassed, not embarrassed, but just taken back that my direct reports had great things to say, because it is always hard to know how you're being perceived by your direct reports. And they were incredibly generous and kind with their words, and it was very humbling, and I feel very honored. Honestly, I believe that leadership is not about something that you do, but I believe it's about really who someone is and how they just see the world and how they interact with people. So for me, I don't think it's anything that I'm doing. It's more of just my personality, my character, and what I value and how that comes out in my leadership skills. I believe that very importantly, in being authentic and transparent, I believe you should highlight successes as well as failures. And I think the biggest thing that I've valued in leaders above me, and I've tried to take the best of leaders that I have had, such as Stephanie, who's a phenomenal leader, and trusting over suspicion, I think, is absolutely crucial. Giving people the benefit of the doubt, allowing people to make mistakes and giving them a safe place to make mistakes. I think that creates a very innovative culture that can try new things and learn from your mistakes. I think that's the only way to grow and be innovative. And so I very much know that my employees know that they can come to me and share with me anything that's going on, and just try to be completely open and transparent with them. And I guess the only other thing I think that's really important is just surrounding myself with complementary talent. I look to build teams that complement each other with their strengths and their weaknesses. I think it's been very important for me when I was interviewing my direct report that you interviewed. Both of them have strong skill sets in areas that I'm extremely weak in. And so I'm not embarrassed in the least to say that, because I think that's what builds strong teams. I am more of a big picture strategic thinker, and they have attention to detail like nobody you've ever seen. And so that actually was one of the things I was looking for in building my team, because I know that it's essential to have a well-rounded team.
Oh, that is so interesting that you say that. But also, I'd like to commend you on being incredibly self-aware. I think that that is something that can be missing from time to time at all levels. At all levels, it's not just it's across the board. So I commend you on that. That's really fantastic, and I think that it's helped you build an incredible team. So that's great. Now, let me ask you, and not to be rude, how long have you been in the working world, Tonia?
I have been in the workforce over 20 years. I took a little bit of time off to be at home with my kids when they were younger. And so then I had to get reestablished back into the work environment. But overall, over 20, probably about 25 years.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I would imagine that in that time, you have seen young talent come into the workforce in different waves. What have you noticed as the biggest influence millennials and Gen Zs are bringing into the workforce, or have brought into the workforce?
Well, absolutely, hands down. I can tell you this just from having teenagers myself. I know for a fact they could run this house on their knowledge of technology with or without any assistance. So it's definitely the rise in technology, being tech savvy. And I really see how that's influenced our company with the offerings that they bring, just assessing that our software and our offerings and providing suggestions and improvements has been really helpful.
That's awesome. So have you, besides the tech, have there been any shifts in, well, you did mention the offerings, but what has really been the surprise that has come with these shifts? Has it been a positive surprise or negative, anything like that?
No, that's just my personality. I always try to look for the positive, and I try to always look for learning opportunities. So I definitely think it's been helpful that our leader has provided the work-life balance. I think one thing that's very important to millennials is that their outside passions fuel them. And so I think the work-life balance that we provide has just been an easy actually benefit for them.
Absolutely. And I'd like to say, I know Shawnee personally. I have met Stephanie, I don't even know how many times, and hung out with her. And they don't just say it, they actually practice that every single day. And I love the rule that you guys have in place as far as answering client emails. What is it, like after 5 or 6 o'clock?
After 7, right. Mm-hmm.
Don't expect a response. And how many other companies do that?
Right.
None.
Right.
So, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say we're very fortunate in handpicking the clients that work along well with that culture and that embrace that culture and appreciate it. I know a lot of our clients, if they're checking emails after or doing work after business hours, that it's predominantly to just get, their inbox cleared out and so they're not holding things up because they're in meetings all day. So typically they don't expect a response at that time. They're just trying to get things off of their plate. So it's been great.
That's awesome. So when you're looking at young talent in particular, because you do lead a younger team, what are some of the things that you're looking for? What are some of those foundational pieces that you want someone to come in? They may not have a lot of experience, but what is it that really says, okay, this person's got potential. This person can be a rock star?
Absolutely. I think, at that level, we don't expect anyone to know everything or to have all the answers. I think which is hard for anyone, not just millennials, when you come into a new role and instantly people are trying to prove themselves and show their value, that you made the right choice in hiring them, which can really be, I try to sit them down immediately, like day one, and say, we don't expect you to know everything. We don't expect you to prove yourself or show your value. What you are here to do at this moment is to learn and observe. And so I think someone that has rock star potential that we see a lot is someone who asks a lot of questions, who doesn't pretend to know it all, and who is just a great observer, not trying to add value. We very much encourage them to observe more in the beginning, and to be proactive, to ask for more work when you're slow, to ask for what you need if you don't have the resources that you need to do your job, and just not to be afraid to ask a lot of questions. One thing that is an absolute bonus for sure is a positive, encouraging spirit, someone who just is very enthusiastic, who is happy to be there, willing to be there, and just willing to help out wherever they can and be a team player.
Okay. I love all that. And I think it's something that, you see a lot of in other companies, that it's like, oh, it's all about the resume. What's on the resume? And at this point, they don't have a lot on the resume, or at least not a lot that's really applicable. And it's really about getting those specific characteristics, those specific traits that are going to translate well into your environment. And it sounds like, you guys are looking for that inquisitive spirit, but also just that, like, hey, I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to go after things, whether it's, in this specific area that is in my job, or
Right.
willing to, spread myself out and help out where needed. Those are important things. Now, how do you spot that on a resume though?
I mean, it's tough. I mean, a resume, I think, is for looking at the skill set, and it's in the interview process where you assess the soft skills that are incredibly important. And so that's why it's important to have both, really.
I agree with that. I do agree with that. So we've already kind of touched on this, and maybe you have some other experiences outside of communique. But have you ever felt the pressure from higher ups at any point in your career to focus more on numbers and metrics and KPIs and less on really people?
I think that's a common pressure with every business. I don't think it's specific to anyone. I mean, every business focuses on profitability and growth. I think that's important. I mean, that's a common pressure. But again, I think I'm very fortunate to work at Communique that values people, and the work-life balance. I think, as Shawnee mentions her Joy Economics, it's about making work as enjoyable and happy to go to as it is at home in your personal life. And it's a balancing act, but again, at the end of the day, we don't want to sacrifice people or values for money or for profitability. I mean, it's equally important, but I think as a leader, it's just natural to me in the DISC assessment of dominant, influencer, steadiness, and conscientious. I'm an influencer. So it just comes natural to me to place emphasis on influencing others, openness, and relationships over tasks and profitability. So I do have to get reined in every now and then on on that. But for me, the people always come first. So
I think that's important. I think that unfortunately, sometimes we do tend to focus too much on the numbers and not enough on the people who drive those numbers.
absolutely.
Mistake. But I understand there's a balance. It's delicate, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So there was something that you said earlier that I really wanted to circle back to, if you don't mind. You said trusting over suspicion and giving people a safe place to make mistakes. And I think that that's really beautiful. And I think that it can be very scary for some leaders to do that because it's so, making a mistake in a lot of instances, people automatically assume that that's a terrible thing. It's a bad idea. That would reflect badly on me as a leader. What do you have to say about that? What are your thoughts?
Well, again, it's about the types of mistakes. Obviously, we prefer smaller mistakes over the larger, more costly mistakes.
Of course.
But regardless, I mean, none of us are perfect. Everyone is going to make mistakes, especially when you're new in your career. And to have an environment that is open to that you can come to immediately and say, hey, I messed this up. I take full ownership. What do I need to do to fix it? In the end is going to be more beneficial, because the sooner I can get in and provide leadership and try to help navigate the process thereafter, the less mistakes and the less costly it is in the end. It's the people that work in the environment, and I know because I've worked in that environment, and especially when I was younger, trying to cover it up because you're so afraid of your boss finding out or someone finding out, and you spend so much time and effort trying to fix it that sometimes you just make it worse.
Yep.
And it just goes down a path that it's almost to the point that you have no choice but to own up to it. And I think the sooner they feel safer to come to me, the better it is for everyone.
So how do you actually help them feel safe in that environment, that they can come to you? I mean, it's one thing to tell people, oh, it's okay to make a mistake. But I think that we've all been in situations before where we've been told, sure, you can make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. But the reality doesn't always match up with that. So how do you make sure that your direct reports actually feel that, hey, Tonia's got my back no matter what? How do you do that?
I mean, I think it's by being authentic and vulnerable with them. I mean, I will constantly share examples of mistakes that I've made, whether it's in the past or current, sharing with them, hey, you're not the only one. I've done this. Other people have done this. And just being very transparent about assuring them that they're not the only one that's ever made a mistake and that it's not the end of the world.
I think that that's really important that you do that. That is I see the number one thing that young employees don't see is, bosses that take responsibility or ownership of their own mistakes. Because then if that is the example that you set one time, you're done. You are done with that team because they have all decided, okay, I've got to hide my mistakes. I've got to run from it or whatever. And that's just, you're setting yourself out to make it, for a disaster. So I love that you do that. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Plus, I think as a leader, it's important for them to know that, I take responsibility for the team. So I'll be the one to step up and take the responsibility for any mistakes and let them know that that's on me. It's not necessarily on them every time, that they can, share that with me, but I will take the full responsibility for the team, and for the mistake of the team is on me. So I think for taking the and not really the brunt, but just taking the ownership of that and then providing them action steps of how to improve, what to do next time, how to make sure that this doesn't happen again, what do we learn from this, is incredibly important. Because to just tell someone they made a mistake, they can just sit and feel bad about themselves, but actually to give them action steps gives them ownership and power, and it shows them to embrace a learning opportunity.
I love that, because it's yes, you see a lot of times people and companies talk about learning opportunities, but actually, showcasing that and highlighting it in a positive light versus you're going to get fired light makes it a world of difference.
Exactly. I mean, and there are mistakes that I can't help or take ownership of. And there have been those opportunities, unfortunately, that I have had to let people go. And that is very unfortunate. And it's a very tough, difficult thing for any of us.
Of course.
No matter how many times you do it, it's still tough.
Of course, of course. So let's switch gears a little bit more. Let's get a little away from the failure and mistake world and talk a little bit more about educating and developing your people. I mean, a lot of your team, or let's talk a little bit first about your team right now. Is it all fresh out of college, or what do we look like right now?
I think we're very well balanced, but we do have a lot of millennials and early in their career. I wouldn't say fresh out of college, but I would say in the first 5 years of their career. Yes.
I mean, I think those first 5 years are critical mass. Like that is like the most special time. And so I'm really pleased that they have a great leader in you, because I think that sets up the rest of their career. So, all right. So let's talk about educating and developing that early in career. What do you see as the benefit, first of all, like overall, to actually spending that time or those resources developing talent?
I think it's very crucial to our business. I mean, obviously, it's sort of cliche to say, but the future is in their hands. Our future is in their hands. So it's important to develop them. And I start off all of our one-on-one meetings by saying, look, I know that it's not likely that you're going to stay with this company for the rest of your life. But I do want to make this a very valuable time for you to learn and grow. And I want you to go into your next position, whatever that might be, with whatever company that might be, saying, I gained a ton of knowledge and greats and honed in on my strengths and weaknesses, and was able to use that in my next position. I mean, I think, so I said, I try to take our one-on-ones as time to less develop you as a person, and what can we do to grow you in your career where you are, and try to get them to think about their strengths, to think about their weaknesses, and then provide action items and action steps to develop them. I think if we don't do that, we're going to lose great talent. That has a lot of opportunity. I think when you have, any turnover, you risk losing client relationships and losing client business. And and I think it keeps us on our toes as an organization to fine tune our skills and to grow in our business and grow our opportunities.
I couldn't agree with any of that more, basically. I do have one just quick clarifying question. How often do you do your one-on-ones with your team?
I do them bi-weekly.
Okay.
And I mean, it doesn't always happen based on, but I at least try to touch base with them once a month.
Okay. And then are those usually what? How long?
30 minutes. 30 minutes touch base, right?
Okay.
And then, we'll provide, a yearly review, which is a little bit more in depth and a much longer meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. But it seems like you cover a fair amount of ground in those 30-minute meetings, which, 30 minutes out of your, every week or every month not that much time, but you also are very hands-on with them should they need it. But it
Oh,
seems like
absolutely.
you have a very open door, I guess, policy where they could come to you and they feel comfortable coming to you, even outside of that 30 minutes.
Yes, absolutely. They text me all the time.
Wonderful. So I'd also like to highlight one thing that you said in that last statement. And this talks more to the financial ramifications of developing your team or maybe not developing your team. But you actually mentioned the potential for when there's turnover, actually potentially also losing clients.
Yes.
Um, I think that's huge. And I don't think that people make that connection enough. So I'd like to see, are there any other ways that you see how this financially benefits you guys in developing your team? Or is it mainly because you guys are pretty customer facing? Is it mainly just that piece?
I mean, I'm sure there's others. I just, it's that's a big bulk of what we do is
Yeah, you guys are
client
very customer facing.
service and
Yeah.
account management. That's so that is the number one thing that comes to mind. I mean, again, not developing talent uh, would also, I mean, lots of mistakes cost money. It costs clients money. So we try to be very hands-on and provide great, development and mentorship to them to avoid as many client mistakes because those can come back to bite us as well.
Oh goodness, yes, yes. And I mean, your entire team is just client service. I mean, that is all you guys do. So that would be, I think, the biggest piece of that.
Yes,
But I mean, obviously you want to build up those skills in case, you eventually have somebody move up into a different part of the company or, whatever. You want them to have built those skills under you, which it sounds like they're doing.
oh, absolutely. And there's the rare instance, I mean, but it does happen where we've had clients that just fell in love with our talent and our employees and have hired them on. And so then someone that was working for us is now our client. And so it's great to have that positive rapport and that relationship already established.
That is great. That is great to have. I mean, of course, you hate to see them go, but at the same time, you want them to have great careers. And if this is the
Absolutely.
logical next step, this is the logical next step.
Absolutely.
So wonderful. All right. So let's circle back a little bit and take a look at something from a different perspective. Um, Tonia, what advice would you give? I know that you have a son currently in college, or maybe some of his friends. So let's talk to them specifically. What would you tell them to look for in their first boss or their first company? What would be the most important things for them to think about?
I think they need to focus on, which I think really comes natural to millennials anyway, is just development and growth opportunities. It's very important in your first career to just learn as much as you can and observe as much as you can. And so I think for them to look for those opportunities in companies that invest in their people and invest in that long-term growth strategy. Um, I think companies that provide great leadership look for ways to build on that. I think for them to identify their strengths and passions. And just, again, it's kind of like what we're looking for in employees, they should be looking for in companies and leadership are just, positive, enthusiastic people that are happy to be there, that are very knowledgeable, that they can learn a lot from.
Awesome. All right. So last question, and then I'm going to let you go. What do you have a favorite leadership book?
Oh, absolutely. I have two actually that
Oh,
I mean, there's a lot that I've read, but two, I have Courageous Leadership by Bill Hybels is one of my absolute favorites. He talks a lot about vision, creating fuel for leaders, and passion for followers. And so I think it's incredibly important for leaders um, to cast vision and to cast it often and frequently. And the other is Next Generation Leader by Andy Stanley. Is my other favorite, that he talks about the 5 C's that mark and shape women and men for the future, which is courage, clarity, competence, coachability, and character.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, fantastic. Well, Tonia, it has been a real pleasure having you on the show. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences being that in the trenches, like early in career leader. I think this is going to be some great takeaways for the entire audience.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a true honor. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the Next Generation Rockstars, where we have discussed all about recruiting and retaining that next generation of talent. So I'm guessing that you probably learned a tremendous amount from this week's Rockstar Leader. And if that is the case, don't keep me a secret. Share this episode with the world, but really share it with your friends, with your colleagues, because they also need to learn how to recruit and retain this next generation of talent, because these skills are crucial to business success moving forward. Now, of course, I want you to keep up to date every single week as we are dropping each and every episode. So be sure to subscribe to your favorite podcast platform of your choice, and you will see the Next Generation Rockstars show up just for you.